Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode 569 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Gryon Media Network. Yeah! Today, recording day, is Thursday, January 30th, 2025, and looking outside, it is a gray and yucky and icky kind of day here at the Beaver Lodge. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly, and to be totally honest, I do not know why. So I'm guessing he either slept terribly last night and is getting a couple of extra moments of hibernation in, or maybe had a migraine and was just in too much pain to be able to get the bright light of a phone right in the eyes to be able to let me know. So you have me alone today. Apologize for the delay because as you can see, I am at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge, so don't have all my usual technical equipment. And well, technology has been trying to foil me a little bit today. And I just realized that I did not put on my microphone. So, pardon me, kits and cubs. While I do that, all right. Hopefully that will improve the audio. Hopefully. If you do not hear me, kits and cubs, please do let me know. I'm sorry here. It's just taken me a couple of minutes to upload everything and have all the technological stuff happen because we weren't also connecting with Facebook and Twitter on our first couple of attempts to launch the show today here. So I'm just making sure that everybody has access to us, as I'm stretching a bit in my intro, as you can obviously tell. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And like I said, Mr. Grizzly's not here. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. And I'm really developing an appreciation for how it is that Mr. Grizzly multitasks during the show right now, because I'm trying to do that myself. All right. Let's see. I had a show today planned that was a little clip heavy. So unfortunately, I'm going to be doing this a bit on the fly for you kids and cubs. I am just going to take a moment here to be able to check in the chat. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to move my camera. So please accept my apologies for this. There we go. And of course, my computer is not showing me the chat, so I cannot tell if you hear me or not. Okay, this is great. I don't know if anybody hears me or not. I'm sorry. Oh, this is a mess this morning. All right, there we go. All right, well, I guess I will just keep talking, and hopefully you hear me. I'm also reloading here the YouTube page on my laptop so that hopefully the chat will load and I can see if you guys see me here. Yeah, I'm having a difficulty setting up kits and cubs, I must admit here. Hold on, let's try it this way, maybe. There we go, that might work. And still the live chat for the show will not come up. Okay. I don't know if you can hear me or not. So here's what I'm going to do, kits and cubs. I am going to reprogram the show and start all over again. Because I don't know if I'm talking into the void or anything else. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. The kits just popped. The chat just popped up. God. What a terrible. Do you hear me? Okay, we can hear you fine. I see Kit Pete there. All right. Sorry about that, kits and cubs. All right, let me start with the intro all over again, and so that Mr. Grizzly will know where to start for the audio cut. I apologize. You've had 8 minutes of just listening to me ramble. I thank you for your patience. All right. Give me a couple of seconds and well, good morning and hello, kits, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 569 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Today, recording day is Thursday, January 30th, 2025, and it is a bit of a gray, icky kind of day here at the Beaver Lodge. Very, very gray, actually, if I'm looking outside, and some pretty dull light. I'm your host, the eager beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Not sure if he is still fighting insomnia or has a migraine, because I've not heard from him this morning, which explains me being late, unfortunately. As you can see, I'm at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge, and programming of the show was a little tricky today. But everything seems to be working now. For those of you who are listening on audio, I had 8 minutes rambling because I couldn't actually tell if anybody could see me, but now I can, and whether they could hear me. So I'm not talking to myself, which when I do and ask myself questions, I get very sensible answers. So talking to yourself is not necessarily a bad thing. But when you're trying to do a podcast and bring some information to the people, to the kits and cubs, and the best damn family in all of podcasting, of course, well, then, being heard kind of matters a little bit. Let's see who we have in the chat today. Kits and cubs, who are we saying hello to if I'm looking into the magic mirror here? We have Kit Saucy. Yes, talking about bird flu this morning. Yes, I had been taking some notes on that over the past couple of days. There's lots of stuff going on there. We have Kit, Miss, and family. Good morning to all of you. Lovely to see you. We have Kit Elaine here in the chat. Good morning, dear one. Kit Cassie here as well. Kit Saucy. I mentioned Kit Saucy already, of course. Kit Nina is in the chat with us today. Hello. And for some reason, I cannot get the chat to scroll. Oh, it's a technologically very difficult day here at the Beaver Lodge. Let's see, we have Kit Carol here, Kit Tavi G. If I miss any of you, I am so sorry. There we go. There's the scroll bar. It just appeared all of a sudden. Things are appearing and disappearing on my screens today, which is very, very weird. So I said we had got Kit Nina, Kit Carol. We have Kit Aussie Pete here. Hello, my friend. Glad you could join us this morning. We have Kit and Jillian telling us how she slept in her car last night. Interesting story over here. I hope that you were able to stay warm. I see here that you have an EV, so you were able to keep the seats warm and everything. So at least there's that. That's good. We have Kit Jen, Kit Hyper T007 joining us again this morning. Hello, thank you so much. Kit Mr. Jim here, saying that's a bit nicer. I'm going to guess that that has something to do with my audio. Great. And who else? If I missed anybody here, I am so sorry, but I think I got everybody on the chat this morning. So good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us on this little bit of an adventure of a show today. All right, so in the show description, I was going to talk to you about Karina Gould's campaign launch because it's been a while now that she's done it, and but the news just keeps on coming in, and we keep on trying to make some time for it because it was very good. Unfortunately, again, we don't have clips, so I cannot show you that today. So I am changing up the show on the fly, kids and cubs. And we will talk a little bit about the leadership race for the Liberals to start off, because there have been some developments. Now, one of the major developments is that, as you know, Mr. Carney, who appears to be in the lead at the moment, has not been heard of a lot over the past couple of days, which has caused the Conservatives to start a whole "where's Carney" type of scenario. So we had Melissa Lansman go to a Nate Erskine-Smith event in favor of Carney, and sort of make some allegations that he's nowhere to be seen and will not reveal his platform and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, well, we've had a bit of news over the past little bit. Justice Marie-Josée Hogg came down with her report into foreign interference, and, well, on the day, Skippy was nowhere to be found. A story managed to find its way into the press stating that he would not accept even the very, very special briefing that the Prime Minister arranged specially just for him because he would not go get his clearance, a threat reductions measures meeting. He's decided to refuse that because now allegedly the claim is not only will he be gagged, but he'll be so gagged that he will not be able to do anything with the information, which is not true, because he's allowed to do the things that are expressly authorized by the government with that information. So he's just lying and moving the goalposts. So we have Mr. Carney, which we can understand why he might have gone, I don't even want to say gone dark, but gone a little more quiet. He's the newer kid on the block. He had a great soft launch, not as good regular launch, but is still in the lead. Chrystia Freeland appears to be imploding by trying to frame her candidacy as other than, hey, I'm a policy nerd, I'm a policy wonk, I handle autocrats, you've seen me do it before, I can do it again. And I broke with the Prime Minister because I believe that circumstances changed suddenly. We got a Trump presidency instead of a Harris presidency. So therefore we need to pivot hard and fast. So yes, while I stand by everything that we have done over the last 8 or 9 years together, is for where we need to go for the future, is we need to make a hard pivot. The Prime Minister disagreed with that. It just leaned into that without trying to be something that she's not, or trying to portray herself as something that she's not. She'd probably be doing better. And we also have Karina Gould, who I've been mentioning, should not be underestimated, had a great campaign launch, said was going to show you some clips of it today. So we'll have that later on. But Chrystia Freeland, for her part, is still making news in this time, right? She's taken advantage of the fact that Mark Carney is probably, talking to members, putting final touches on his policy stuff. He gained himself a little bit of advantage, given he's the one that everybody's talking about at the moment, to be able to go and take a few days, add a little mystery to his campaign, and work on those types of things while the other people are filling the air, right? Especially if the other people are filling the air and imploding. Why interrupt? It's a strategic decision at this point. But I mean, he's going to be coming up with announceables and policies, and he happened to have such a great debut that he could buy himself a couple of days to do that. So I'm not surprised that he's doing that. I don't find that weird. I don't find that odd. Because what I do find odd is that the guy that who's been saying for the last 2 years he wants to be prime minister, is nowhere to be seen and nowhere to be heard on the day that the Prime Minister of Canada announces he's going to step aside, on the day that the then President-elect of the United States starts musing aloud about annexation by economic force, and nowhere to be found when the justice who worked on a foreign interference public inquiry that he himself full-throatedly and very loudly demanded has nothing to say on the day other than he will not follow one of her recommendations. He basically flipped her the bird. So, but no comment from the party about how it is they received the report, what they think about the quality of the work. No, not even like really thanking her for the work, even. Just gone. Meanwhile, the other narrative is that you have Doug Ford declaring an election in Ontario, running all around, trying to capitalize on the capital he built over a very short term as Captain Canada. But then, nobody reporting that, well, Captain Canada actually quit his job the day before the big game and left the team alone. But you have him running around, given the illusion of leadership, while Pierre is in hiding. Again. So things are not very good for Skippy. The other thing that's not very good for Skippy is that ECOS polling, and while again, all the other posters have not come up to show that, but we have seen some movement, but ECOS polling is now showing that the lead between the Liberals and the Conservatives is now 3. The spread is 3, which is within the margin of error. So it's statistically insignificant. And at these levels, given the concentration of the Conservative vote out west, 36 Conservative and 33 Liberal, especially with the rebound of Liberals in Ontario, according, of course, to ECOS, means that the prediction is now for a Liberal minority government, which is the first time in a very long time that any poll anywhere in Canada whatsoever has predicted that the Liberals would be in the lead. And I see that we have some person in the chat going, this guy likes the Liberals. Yeah, I do. Because when I compare the Liberals to the alternatives, the Conservatives, who do nothing but fearmonger, lie, and spread disinformation, and won't cooperate to be on Team Canada. And when I look at the New Democrats, who keep on doing the will they, won't they, but won't really say, and keeps on acting like a jilted teenager that didn't get called for a date for prom, there's only one adult in the room. So among the 3, I like the Liberals. But it's by default, because the other 2 did not step up. Sorry, I compare my choices to each other, and not the almighty or some ideal. There's also the Greens, who are doing rather well in terms of leadership with Elizabeth May and the return of Jonathan Pedno. But of course, everybody turns around and says, oh, well, if only the Greens, could win some seats. Well, the Greens could win some seats if you voted for them. I mean, that's all it takes. I mean, if you like the leadership, you like the platform, there's that too. We're also fans, some days, of Yves-François Blanchet of the Bloc, funnily enough, because he likes to tell it how it is. But unfortunately, we don't like the racism. So there are some Conservatives that we like very much, like Karen Vecchio, but the party doesn't seem to like her. So unfortunately, we have a party that's also eating its own, which gives us a lot to criticize. So, we have 5 parties. We like something about all of them. We dislike something about all of them. So we are nonpartisan, but we are openly progressive. Anywhere from green to traditional progressive conservative, you're going to find something that you like on this show. If you are more extreme left than green or more extreme right than progressive conservative, then you're probably the type of person that shows up in the chat and goes, this guy likes liberals. So, I mean, you know, what could I say for you, buddy? Hopefully, by adding to our engagement here, by watching the show, you know, if you stick around, you might learn something. But yeah, we happen to like liberals. Unfortunately, this time it seems to be by default. But the fact that we are talking about the liberal leadership race itself doesn't mean that we like liberals. It's just kind of a big news thing. So whatever it is that you want it to be going on here, sir, it's not happening. Okay, so back to the regular show. With liberals, right? You've got Karina Gould standing there trying to make a case for herself. You've got Mark Carney that's doing the strategic thing. And you've got Chrystia Freeland who's trying to find a way to bounce back by putting in some, by talking about some policy. So while Pierre Poilievre is still in hiding, Chrystia Freeland took advantage of the moment to come out and make a few statements about the foreign interference inquiry report and some of the things that she says that she would do if she were prime minister with regard to that, right? So, and I have to say that she has some positions that are interesting, some that we have called for ourselves, which is kind of cool. And you can see that, you know, she's the policy, she's going into the policy here. So she posted a tweet about 16 hours ago that says, as Liberal leader and your prime minister, I will have a, well, sorry, that's her second thing, sorry, second set of announcements. I will get back to there here. But sorry, it was on January 28th, around 2:05 p.m. So shortly after Justice Hogue tabled her report, she said, posted here, please see my statement on the Foreign Interference Commission's final report. And she states here, it's a statement by her, says, today the Foreign Interference Commission released its final report, which states that more serious action is urgently needed to protect our democratic institutions from foreign influence. I welcome Justice Hogue's recommendations. A government led by me will take foreign interference seriously and will never risk our national security for political gain. Canada could have and should have done better. As Prime Minister, I will ensure I get briefed every day on issues of national security. Then I will take action. Delay can mean disaster or death when managing security threats. Within our own Liberal Party, we must take all action possible to root out any risk of foreign interference. If I become Prime Minister on March 9th, she might not become Prime Minister on March 9th. March 9th is the date that we will have the date of the vote, I guess, and we will find out the result, but then the Prime Minister has to step down. The other person needs to be sworn in. Sometimes the new candidate likes to take a few days to select their new cabinet and start to write their speech from the throne. So the Prime Minister that would be currently in place would be there for another week or so longer. Sometimes it happens this way. So it's not necessarily as soon as you win the leadership vote, you are the Prime Minister. There are a couple of more official and protocol things that need to happen before that happens. All right, so she's got a 3-point mission here on her statement. Number 1, declassify all intelligence and evidence of foreign interference in federal elections over the past 2 decades, while ensuring that sources and methods and any information that would be harmful to our allies is protected. So as Justice Hogue said, you know, and other people saying that we have a little too much secrecy here in the nation, and that we could afford to loosen up and unclench a little bit. So this is something that addresses this particular thing. 2, require all party leaders in Parliament to obtain top secret security clearance and attend regular intelligence briefings to ensure that combating foreign interference is a united effort for all of Canada. Every political party and leader can help combat interference. Canada can learn from the best practices of allied democracies, such as the United States' mandatory national security and intelligence briefings for senior politicians of all parties. And 3, require our national security and intelligence services, including the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or CSIS, to report all concerns of foreign interference within a party or caucus directly to the party leader. If national security agencies suspect a parliamentarian has knowingly or unknowingly engaged in activities of concern, they must investigate and, if validated, notify the party leader. If no action is taken within 1 week by the party leader, the findings must be shared with all party leaders. I call upon all candidates in the leadership race and all party leaders in Parliament to agree to my bold plan to preserve and protect Canada's democratic institutions. The other thing she called for a couple of days previous as well is for all the people in the leadership race to declare that they intended to run in the next election should they not win. Chrystia Freeland has done that. I'm guessing that this is a way or a strategy to sort of corner Mark Carney. So, you know, if he says he's not, there's no guarantee he's going to run if he loses, well, then he's just visiting, right? So I think that's that type of play to try and corner him. I don't think that's going to work. I think he's, if he hasn't already said, very heavily hinted that he's running no matter what. Now, require all party leaders in the Parliament to obtain top security clearance and regular intelligence briefings. If that was mandatory, and it should be, because right now we do have a loophole in that, 3 becomes possible, because if all party leaders have their security clearance, well then when there's something affecting the party, national security can go directly to the party leader at any time and say, hey, there's an issue in your party that you need to deal with. So this would actually be good. Now, the people that are a little more hesitant about these types of changes would say something like, are you sure you want to surrender authority or power over the selection of your prime minister over to the national security apparatus of the nation? And I'm guessing that this comment is kind of made in the sense that my thinking is that because we have a situation in Canada such that a leader of a political party can refuse to go get their security clearance until such time as they happen to become prime minister and then get access to all that national security information, right, without ever having received the required security clearance via the traditional oversight method. Okay, so that's the situation at the moment. We do have this loophole. That could be the case for the current prime minister for all we know, right? Because he became prime minister, he just gets it. We don't know, because we weren't talking about this back then, whether or not he obtained a personal security clearance that's top level, or he just, didn't have to because he became prime minister and they just gave it to him. But right now, we have a leader of the opposition that currently won't do the minimum, right? We have a leader of the opposition that has cavorted openly with people that have shown up in the nation's capital and took the city hostage for about 4 weeks and presented an MOU saying how they would like to overturn the government. We have a leader of the opposition that is openly quoting the endorsement and leaning into it of a man south of us who is working for a man who threatened economic annexation for us, and not only working for him, but funding him. That's a national security risk by any stretch of the imagination. Because the leader of the opposition has 100% of the power to remove any doubt as to whether or not he is a national security risk by sitting for security clearance, but he will not do that. He will not give us the peace of mind. He will not give our allies around the world that peace of mind. So that's a problem. That was never reality in Canada. We never imagined a Canada in which someone in the House of Commons would not earn their title of honorable. But Pierre seems to want to do that. Now, I understand that as leader of the nation, the leader of the nation has to have access to these documents in order to be able to lead the nation. It's a constitutional thing, right? That happens. I understand that it's constitutionally based. But we do have a de facto loophole. In 2025, in this day and age, do we find it acceptable as a nation that any leader of any political party can gain access to NSICOP level or even higher, cosmic level, security clearance without having been cleared via the traditional oversight method? This is why I've proposed this. Now, another comment is, well, you can't require MPs to get it because it might be a breach of privilege. I'm not exactly sure how it is a breach of privilege. I tried to get that person who was making that comment to me to explain it to me, but they did not, because I believed that this is a loophole, not a structural one, but a de facto one, not a de jure one, that it needs to be closed. Apparently, I was too dumb to converse with. So I was not able to get the full sense of the point of view on that, how it is a breach of privilege. But as far as I'm concerned, the way that I'm presenting it, it's that it's in your role as a party leader and not as an MP that you must receive this clearance. And therefore, I do not see the potential for a breach. And given that it is possible to be a party leader without having a seat, being a party leader is not necessarily tied to being an MP. There's no reason you can't attach that to the party leader function. Maybe there is a legal reason again. I don't know. Like I said, the person wouldn't share the depth of their experience with me. They were just telling me that I was wrong and wanted to sell out my country to national intelligence. So there are apparently some concerns on that level. For me, I would see it if it was made a requirement in order to apply to run in a party leadership. And this could be federal and provincial, because I also believe that the provincial premier should do it, and probably the mayors of our largest cities should probably have the top secret clearance too, because sometimes on a need-to-know basis, there's information that could come to them. So it would seem to me that when you are submitting your candidacy, you tick the box, yes, I am willing to submit to that type of clearance, and you actually do submit to that first interview. And submitting to that first interview is part of your application process. And once you have done it, you have ticked the boxes. Because right now, we have someone that doesn't at all wants to go get it. And it's creating a problem. It creates an opening. And on this type of stuff, we need to be airtight. Airtight. So I don't know what the solution is. This is not my subject of expertise for national security. But it would seem to me in a country as Canada, with as creative and brilliant minds as we have, there must be a way to write a law in some way that it's not only party leaders being encouraged or whatnot, but that it somehow becomes mandatory that they get it. And perhaps I am wrong unconstitutionally like this, but somebody would actually have to deem me worthy enough as a human being to actually sit down and explain to me why I'm wrong, which did not happen, unfortunately. So as far as I know, there should be a way, and Chrystia Freeland obviously believes that there is a way. And well, she has been in government, so hopefully she's not leading us down a path of things that are not possible for simply campaign positioning or whatnot. But it seems like a well thought out position in this state, in this case. Now, there probably is a counter position that's equally intelligent and can be developed. But I don't know what it is yet. And I haven't heard many people from the party come up and take a stand against this or say it's bad or say it's good. I haven't actually heard much people react to it, to be totally honest. But that is one of the policies that she has come up with to try to take up some of the space while Mr. Carney is out there, I guess, tooling up his campaign for the next phase of it. In the meantime, she has received the endorsement of Minister Ahmad Hussein out in Alberta. So that could be helpful for her for organizing out west. But then she has made another, and then she appeared also on Bloomberg television, on the business television network in Canada for a conversation. And I will take a look at that as well. There's been some news yesterday with the swearing in ceremony of, not the swearing in, the confirmation hearing of the US Secretary of Commerce as well. That kind of plays into all of this. And then yesterday she decided that she was going to make another announcement And she says, as Liberal leader and your Prime Minister, I will have a smaller, more effective cabinet and Prime Minister's office. Please see my full statement below. And this is the next one. Making government more efficient without impacting the benefits and services Canadians count on is essential. We must use tax dollars responsibly. Leadership starts at the top, and that's why to start, we must right-size the cabinet and the Prime Minister's office. As leader of the Liberal Party of Canada and Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland will, 1. Reduce the size of cabinet to no more than 20 ministers, a 50% reduction from the current cabinet. A cabinet led by Chrystia Freeland will be more focused and more effective, balancing regional diversity and breadth of experience to ensure ministers are given the space to meaningfully contribute to governing. This cabinet will revive empowered regional ministers, and it will be supported by the ministers of state. So basically, she is hinting here. This is another a little bit of a dig, because the Prime Minister said when he came into power that he was going to do government by cabinet. A lot of people are saying that that didn't happen. We ended up getting one of the most centralized in the PMO governments ever. Chrystia Freeland is saying that I will do government by cabinet for real, and to prove it, I will reduce the size of the cabinet. So that I'm going to guess that every minister, I guess, has a larger voice, but every minister would also have way more files. Not sure if that's a thing, how it translates into real life, especially since, as the world gets more technologically advanced and as people interact more and as resources become more scarce, there tends to be more and larger and more pressing emerging issues, some of them that require cabinet positions. I mean, many, many years ago, we never thought that we would have a minister of addictions. But the world's changed. In the UK, there's a minister of loneliness, because things have changed. I don't know if there's one now, but there was one at some point, seniors and, tackling loneliness. Things emerge. Science does what it does, right? Geopolitics does do. So I'm not necessarily sure that a smaller number of ministers necessarily means a more effective cabinet. Maybe it could, but for those who like smaller government, they might like this. However, this is not smaller government in terms of public service. This is smaller government in terms of actual cabinet. And number 2, reduce the size of the Prime Minister's office by 50% to restore a true cabinet government. By ending the overreach of the Prime Minister's office, Chrystia Freeland will empower cabinet ministers, members of Parliament, and all Canadians to more meaningfully contribute their ideas to make our country better. These 2 actions to restore trust and confidence in the government are just the first steps in Chrystia plan to make government more effective and efficient, to deliver services faster and better. So there you go. Again, the second one, not sure whether a reduction in the amount of staff has a direct impact on the ability of cabinet to be more independent. It makes it such that a PMO could not have, let's say, we're assigning these 2 people to this one cabinet minister, be their person, monitor everything, be their resource, whatever. So in that sense, yes, it could give more room, but again, there are emerging issues in area. Well, that's the thing with politics, right? Something emerges, and like, how do you respond? And then you got to signal your response so that you name a person to do something, and then something grows, right? So, because the easiest way to show that you're responding to somebody is to name somebody to tackle it, to show response. So, it happens often that people say, they'll reduce the size of it, and it just eventually creep happens and it starts to grow. Govern it by cabinet, while it can be interfered with an overreaching PMO that's too micromanaging. All you really need is a Prime Minister that decides that they're going their own way, that they're a one-man show, a bit like Stephen Harper is. And then there goes government by cabinet, and has nothing to do with the PMO itself. I mean, a Prime Minister that does that usually then tools their PMO such to make sure that they are a party of one or a government of one, but right in and of itself, maybe not restore that type of thing, but they are signs that she does want to bring about a change in culture. She seems to be putting an emphasis in her campaign about being there for the grassroots of the party as well, and wanting to reform the party for the benefit of the grassroots. Remember, as a party leadership race, these are things that are important to party members, even though they might not be of interest to the general electorate. And right now, the audience to whom they are speaking, even though all of Canada is watching, is the party base, right? So a lot of people will be sitting there going like, well, why is she wasting time talking about that? Well, because she's talking to the direct audience she needs to talk to at this moment. And there are some people that care about that type of stuff, right? The health and the strength and the vitality of the party, ensuring that it has a future and that the structures are strong. So in party politics, it's actually a subject of great importance, even though it never really translates that much to the general election. It's more like, making sure that the foundations of the house, that the basics are very well taken care of in order to do the rest. All right, I'm looking at the chat here, and Kit Environmental Coffee House saying here, a lovely compliment. Douglas is really good at this, I believe is the compliment you see. I can't see the last word of the line because the camera's covering it. But yeah, thank you so much for that very nice compliment, Kit Environmental Coffee House. I appreciate that. Yes, I see that we have some interesting behavior on the chat here with some name calling and stuff like that. Kit Saucy, as you know, you are always welcome to use the wrench at will. Yeah, especially if we have some AI accounts as well here. But hey, that must mean we're doing something right? If they're showing up, because we had a certain number of years with very few sort of AI bots and people just popping in for a day or two and deciding to make their presence felt. And now that's happening a little more often, which must mean that we have some things to say that are hidden. Because, to be totally honest, right, the only reason someone would want you to stop speaking is because if you're saying something true and you're being a little too effective at it. So I take the presence as a compliment, as a sign that we're doing something right and that we actually are reaching people, and we're reaching people in such a way that there are certain people that think that we need to be stopped somehow or prevented or interrupted. Good. I appreciate the validation. Thank you. And once again, thank you for your engagement, adding to our viewership numbers. Well, helps us with the algorithm and also helps our finances. So thank you. As Justin Trudeau was famous for saying, and it made a lot of people who do this type of thing go out of their minds, thank you for your contribution. Okay, moving on. Kids and guns. So, Chrystia Freeland positioning herself. We've got the Ecos poll, and as we say, and I saw the comment in the chat, and that's true, remember, Ecos poll you got to take with a grain of salt because they are not one of the 3 A+ pollsters. They're rated a little lower. However, in the most recent election, Ecos did do very well with regard to its forecast and what happened. Also remember that polls do not predict the future. Polls tell you about the very, very recent past. Right? When a poll reports a result, it's a result of something they did in the past. That's how people felt in the past when the result comes. Right? Very recent past, maybe a week and a half ago to a week, but it's recent past. It doesn't predict the future. Now, if you're watching a poll over time and you're looking at all the past and you're seeing some trend lines develop, trends are your friend. Those are things you should pay attention to. The top line number of the horse race, as I've been mentioning on the show, right, for the better part of the last 2 years, the Conservatives are leading, yes, because this is the kick the tires phase, right? 2 years before an election, kind of tired of the old guy, got nothing to lose, get a little angry, get a little antsy, throw some support to the other party, park it there, send it as a message to the government, hey, you guys need to straighten up like this because we're playing footsie with the other guy. We're open to a change. But then, usually within a year, to the election, things, the margin narrows. That did not happen in this case. right? But we had other major things. So let's look at the result, wait for the result of the US presidency, because that could change some things. And whoo, boy, did that ever change some things, didn't it? Because according to ECOS, we went from a 25-point lead to a 9-point lead in about the space of 1 month. And then now that's down to 3 since then. Right? That's been seen in Angus Reid. Angus Reid had a 13-point swing, I think, for the Liberals. Now, Angus Reid had the Liberals at 16%, which I think might have been a little artificially low. But with Mark Carney, 16 to 29, that's 13. Now, it still leaves a huge gap from 44, something like that, to 29 between. But that's a 13-point jump in one pool in a short period of time. And if the trend that ECO's seeing, that there was a bump from the Prime Minister resigning, and then there was a bump after Carney's performance, and then it's slow and steady, again, with Skippy not helping himself and Jenny Byrne not helping the party by losing all mastery and control over herself online. And stunts like trying to portray probably the nicest man in Parliament, Nathan Smith, as a predator. Like that did not work at all. But people see these types of things. There's also Doug Ford sucking up a lot of oxygen right now with his election. So you got a Liberal leadership race. You got Doug Ford with an election. You got Donald Trump sucking up all the oxygen. You got Pierre trying to make some room to get himself heard when he's not in hiding. Things are not going well for the Conservatives right now. People are not really there, and they don't have a message for the moment. They're still talking carbon tax. They're still talking everything's Justin Trudeau. The moment is now, and the leader of the opposition is not meeting the moment. He's not even showing up to meet the moment, and the moment is passing him by. Just is. And that might have something to do. I saw in the ECOS numbers, there were numbers about attachment to Canada. And in the 90s, around the time of the referendum in Quebec, attachment to Canada was over 70%. Then it's like in the 60s. So just before Trump became president, it got down to 32%. And then all it took was for Trump to take a couple of swipes back at us, and we're back over 50. And literally, if you watch the thing, it's a curve that goes down sharply like this and bounces up. Wing. 2 years of 24/7 relentless, nonstop bashing Canada, talking us down, how we're broken, we suck, got us to hate ourselves that badly. Our relationship with Pierre Poilievre as leader of the opposition was downright abusive. He gaslit us into hating ourselves. It took a wannabe dictator south of us, musing about annexing us, to get us to realize that, hey, we actually like and respect ourselves. Pierre Poilievre got us to hate ourselves. And the numbers show it. So yeah, if you're asking me if I like liberals, yeah, I do like liberals. I like people who talk to me about my country and have nice things to say about it. Who could tell the truth about our past and the truth about what's going on now that's not working well. But it actually tell us, you know what, we can build, we can go somewhere, we can be something. Is that everything's broken, everybody sucks, everything's terrible. Don't let governments take big projects. Governments will only screw it up. I don't know if you saw that clip going on. Like, the guy who wants to be government says don't let government lead big projects because governments only screw things up. So if you want to be the government And he says, you got, my plan is to give all that to the private sector with like no government involvement, as little as possible. So, but if government screws everything up and you want to be the government and you have a plan to fix the government, doesn't that mean that you will screw up your plan to fix government? Because government screws everything up. See, when you listen to him, right? Oh, give this to corporations to do this. Government screws everything up. It'll be much more effective. It sounds good, but if you actually listen to him, if you actually take the time to stop and listen to him and think about what he's saying, government screws everything up, so make me the government so I can screw everything up. I want to be the one who screws everything up. He's not planning to fix it for you. He's got a plan to get government out of it, and government screws everything up. So he's going to screw up his own plan. I say leave well enough alone then. See, he talks fast. He puts bits of sentences together, bits of phrases to make sentences. But he says nothing. He puts his little position in there, but all the ways that he uses to justify it and sell it, whatnot, if you sit down and you think about them and you put them together, he either says nothing at all, he puts some concepts together that sound business-like and economic-like in it, but they're either empty and meaningless, or it's literally bunches of phrases put together as a word salad, like this, with a position put in there. Recently, he's been out there talking about sending people back. If we have people in Canada who are not permanent residents and not citizens and they're breaking the law, we should send them back. That's already the law. That's already the law. There is discretion in application of the law, but that is the law. But it's kind of interesting that, days after Donald Trump starts ice raids in the south of us, that Pierre Poilievre's, one of the few things that he's able to say in front of the cameras over the past few days is that, hey, if we have some violent criminals over here that happen to be not permanent residents, we should kick them out. Now, of course, he's saying this in the context of, Palestinian protesters, right? Because and I guess that would depend on your definition of what is a violent protester. Are we talking about a protester that comes up with a weapon and hits someone? An assault? Yeah, probably. Or are we talking about, someone that comes in and, I don't know, maybe threw a rock at a window? Yeah, there's vandalism and that should not be done, but is that a violent protester? Violent enough to be deported? Right? It's all those things, again, when they talk about, like wanting to limit the right to protest in certain ways. Well, we see how convoy protest and how an indigenous protest to stop clear cutting a forest are handled. We saw how the RVs by the side of the road on the border of two provinces in Atlantic Canada were handled versus Black Lives Matter protests. We saw how the little demonstration by Greenpeace in front of the residence of an official was quickly dismantled. But the convoy was allowed to go on for nearly 4 weeks. The person, when you have these laws, you have to be careful, because the person in power often gets to determine what is violent or what is political and shut you down. That's why these laws, that's why we have something like a Canadian Civil Liberties Association. who are, yes, annoying. But they're there to make sure it's like, did you pay attention to this? Because you might be setting yourself up for that, and you really don't want that. We should pay attention to them when they do that, right? Because their only loyalty is to civil liberties. They don't care which party, whatnot, so long as civil liberties are being protected and not being abridged. So you have to, when you're listening to the leaders, right, you have to listen for what's real, what's BS. And like I said, there's a portion of real and BS to what every politician is saying, right? There's always some framing, some spin, whatnot. And framing and spin, right, are natural things. They're normal things. They're communications tools. They're fine. This, when used appropriately, right, they're good. If we're talking about smoking cessation, for example, right, putting the frame on it, smoking cessation, it's good for your health. It might extend your life. The money you're not spending on cigarettes is money you can spend on other stuff, enjoying life. It's a frame that you put on things, right? And you sell a message. Now, everything in the frame is true, like this, but it excludes some things. The frame doesn't necessarily tell you that, trying to quit smoking is one of the hardest things that you're ever going to do. That you'll probably fail 5-6 times before it sticks, that you have to never quit quitting, that you might gain weight. The other things, right? It doesn't tell you all that stuff. It doesn't tell you about cravings. It doesn't tell, right? It just puts here are all the good things that can happen to you if you stop smoking. Oh, wow, this is great. Yeah, but it's hard. It's like real hard, right? So, and then there's putting frames on things to make things seem like they're not, right? The example that I often use about this, which is a little salacious, but you and your buddies are getting together to watch the game at one of your buddies' friends in the basement on TV, have a couple of beers and watch the game. It's like, yeah, you had a couple of beers and you watched the game, but you also placed a phone call and had a couple people come over. People who, let's say, remove their clothes to music, right? And other activities happen. Yeah, the game was on, and you did have some beers, but there was a whole other thing that happened down there in that basement that you didn't mention, right? You just framed it as if it was just beers and football. But you didn't talk about the call girls. So that's a frame to put something on it. For example, a strategic sin of omission. Oh, did we call girls? I totally forgot about that. Gee, yeah, kind of an important element of the day's activities. Right? So you got to be careful with framing. Sometimes people of good intent will put a good frame on things, and people of ill intent will put a frame to try and make things look one way to lead you down a path. That's why your critical thinking skills are very, very important, particularly in this phase. A particular phase where you got a lot of people, like in a liberal leadership race, campaigning. Like, for example, we have one of the 6 approved candidates, so far still approved. Don't know if the party is going to remove that. But Pistala, I don't know if you saw, but there was a profile of her. I don't know if it was an interview she gave, whatnot. I didn't read it, with Warmington. But the article was basically the sort of like Canadian Trump in heels or something like that, or the Canadian Trump wants to go down and talk. Well, and then she actually made a meme of it for herself with the thing. So she's proud of this. Party rules allow parties to disqualify someone if they are not
in alignment with the overall values and mission and direction of the party. She's running for the Liberal Party as a Canadian Trump. Would seem to me that that would be grounds for disqualification for not being aligned with the values and the overall direction of the party. So again, the party had 10 days from, I think it was the 23rd, I think, of January, I think it is. Yes, to confirm for sure whether or not someone is part of the race or not. Now, my guess would be is if the party sees the number of people that have registered for the vote isn't extraordinarily high, like there's like 250,000 people that have just showed up like this, and they don't really recognize and they don't know from where or from who, and it's like, oh, and then all of a sudden all of them vote Ruby Dalla. Right? So the party has some stuff going on that it needs to look into and be sure with regard to certain candidacies to make sure that they are all in line. But right now, yeah, hers looks like an outright hostile candidacy. Again, hopefully there will be something coming down in the next few days from the party that says, yeah, we just can't have that. I'm sorry. But so far, she is still confirmed to run that we know of. Unfortunately. Ugh, God. Oh, I see Mademoiselle Fox here in the chat a little bit. So let's see if there's anything there. Thanks for the coffee. And is there any news about Mr. Grizzly here? Let's see. She says, yes, I'm going to. Oh, it's Mademoiselle Fox talking about her show for Friday, saying that she's going to either pre-record today or join the chat or try to go live without Mr. Grizzly yesterday. So I'm guessing there might have been something that came before in the chat that I missed that indicates how he's doing today. I'm just going to scroll back to see if I see it. Oh, there we go. Good morning, good people. Douglas and L, Mr. Grizzly's social media assistant, sends his regards. He slept little last night, so sleeping in this morning, as I suspected. Another battle with insomnia. Again, I completely and fully empathize. Thank you for bringing us the update, Mademoiselle Fox, because I'm always concerned when my good friend is not with me. I miss him. I like him. He adds to the show. He makes it much more fun. Even when he scoops my ending like he did yesterday, I know I wasn't looking pleased, and I wasn't, but hey. It's our thing. It's our dance. I do the setup, and then he just like comes in with the punchline. I saw something the other day. It was a Facebook meme that went, in every couple, there's a person that stacks the dishwasher like a Scandinavian architect and one that stacks it like a raccoon on crystal meth. And all my friends are going, oh, Douglas, it must be tough being the raccoon on meth. And it's like, no, I'm actually the Scandinavian architect when it comes to our relationship. I'm the one that packs the suitcases and then packs the truck when we're going camping and, and the fridge, anything, all that kind of stuff. So the dishwasher. So yeah. But in this case, it's sort of like I'm building all the blocks to like build a narrative, like this Scandinavian architect, and then here comes my ADHD Grizzly. Oh, by the way, did you see this? And then I roll with it. Hey, what can I say? It's our thing. It's what we do. It gives us charm. So I'm glad he is. I'm glad he's taking time for self-care, and thank you for the update, Mademoiselle Fox. But I do hope he is back to his rested self soon, because, like I said, the show goes better and runs a whole lot smoother when he's around. All right, just looking in the chat here, see if there's anything else from the kits. I see that there is some civics being done in the chat here, saying that we don't vote for our Prime Minister here in Canada. Indeed. Good stuff. Glad you guys are talking.
Okay, so moving on to other things. You've got the whole liberal leadership that's going on. We also have an Ontario election, and something that I was going to bring you today, if we had time, is an interview I saw with Bonnie Crombie. We still have to do the launch stuff with that too. I mean, there's just been so much news, kids and cubs, and we still haven't got to Jaime Batiste yet, launch as well from the federal. There's just too much going on, and we haven't even touched on the Quebec Liberal leadership race too. There's just too much damn news. So in Ontario, they're off to the races. Right? Doug Ford is doing his thing. I'm Captain Canada. I need a strong mandate. I need to be there for the full 4 years of Trump. It has to be me. There's only one choice. There's us. No, there's not only one choice. There are certain polling companies that are indicating that the Progressive Conservatives in Ontario might also be in trouble, that there might be a sharp shift. I saw the interview with Bonnie Crombie yesterday. She was on TV Ontario, for those who haven't noticed it or weren't aware of it. And if you don't live in Ontario, fortunately, TV Ontario does put their programming on YouTube, so you can check it out. It was actually a pretty good interview. I have to say, it was a pretty good interview. There are moments where, things seem a little forced or whatnot. But overall, it was a pretty good interview. She's got some interesting angles on it. They were asking about Ford and the tariffs and all that kind of stuff. And Bonnie Crombie is really, really trying to do a message discipline thing where she wants to talk about Trump as little as possible, making it very clear that Doug Ford is not going to be in the negotiating room when it comes time to actually negotiate with Trump. That all Doug Ford is going to do is give his input to the federal government instances who will be doing the negotiations, right? And therefore, she doesn't have all that much to say about it, because the job that she's running for is Premier of Ontario, and she would like to talk about things that affect Ontarians, like healthcare, like education, right? And affordability. And I think she had a fourth one in there, but I remember those three off the top of my head. It's a very interesting platform, because she is focusing on the fact that Doug Ford isn't that great of a deal maker anyway, if he was negotiating, but he's not, thank goodness. And there are other things in there. There were twice that she had me cheering, actually cheering. I was like watching, I was going, yes, because finally, kids and cubs, we have a liberal leader of a party anywhere in Canada who could speak and was speaking to rural issues, admitting that liberals have not talked to rural Canada in a long time. Now, full transparency, and I said it on the show at the time of the Liberal leadership race in Ontario, I had done a little bit of work for candidate Ted Hsu in terms of public speaking skills and delivering a speech. And in those discussions, I had mentioned about policy for rural Canada. I think I might have also mentioned it when we interviewed MP Mark Gerritsen, whether or not there was anything. And as I mentioned, Ted Hsu mentioned that he could speak, in fact, to rural issues, because Kingston riding that he represents is half urban and half rural, and spent a lot of time in his leadership going to rural Ontario. I don't know if he brought a lot of information back to the party with regard to that, and brought it to Bonnie Crombie. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Bonnie Crombie as well. She's been traveling and going out. It seems that she spent a lot of time in smaller towns as well during that tour to be able to come back with that information. So there does seem to be a concerted strategy among the Liberals, at least the Ontario Liberal Party, to make an outreach to rural Ontario and smaller towns. Finally! You can't just speak to the cities if you're going to be a national party. There's a reason why a lot of Western Canada is so pro-conservative. Nobody talks to them. Nobody talks to them. We have Kits in our chat. We have Kit Cassie, who's from Manitoba. We have, just talks about us to all the people from Saskatchewan, the farm wives who are watching us. Good morning. Lovely to see you. They have real concerns. They have real issues, right? How the carbon tax was applying to a fuel to dry grains was an issue. When there's a rail strike, that's an issue. I guess they have healthcare issues, access to healthcare issues, and even worse than we do in the cities, right? Because they're in rural and remote areas. They don't necessarily have all the services nearby. Whatever services they have are being cut. Access to the education. They have the overcrowded classrooms too, and fewer teachers wanting to go up there, right? There's how things are more expensive. Housing, right? Getting all the materials up there. Because everything is so much more expensive if you're way up in the north. Food and getting a good diet. Anything having to do with preventative health, right? These are real issues. And they don't get talked about enough because we're talking about crime. And even in smaller towns, even the addictions issue that we are seeing in our big cities is happening over there too. So, and I mean, small towns. I mean, Thunder Bay is not necessarily a small town if you compare it to like Ottawa and Toronto. It's smaller, but in that area, it's the big place. But there's a huge issue in Thunder Bay. There's a huge issue in Belleville, based on what Kit's have been telling us. But it's all over. It's all over. So to hear a party leader that has an L by their name actually speak eloquently about rural issues, to be able to riff off a certain number of things and stating that she's got a commitment to it, I am there for that. So hopefully there is going to be people ready to take him on and respond and make things uncomfortable for him, because right now it kind of looks like he's sailing to another victory. But like I said, we'll see with more public polling results, see if their Ontarios are upset and mad at an early election call. Often that's a story for a day or two, or maybe even 3 in a campaign. This one's a short one because election date is on the 27th of February. So it's like just to say it's a month-long campaign, and the shortest month. So Doug Ford clearly will have a strategy of running on all Trump all the time, pretty much, with 1 or 2 things local. Bike lanes. I did put in $1.8 billion to make sure that, promise you that you'll all get medical something in the next 4 years. We know what a Doug Ford promise is worth, right? Exhibit A, Greenbelt. Okay, he promised not to touch it. Second we turned around, he was humping it like Donald Trump on an American flag, right? Just feeling it all up. So Doug Ford's promises aren't worth much. So if someone can make the case that he's a terrible deal maker, has got nothing really for rural Ontario, and has nothing for the big issues of the day that actually concern Ontarians with regard to health and education and affordability, she might have an avenue. Now, interesting development, Bonnie Crombie, when she was mayor of Mississauga, seemed to have a rivalry with Patrick Brown, who was the mayor of Brampton, about sort of like the future of the region. Well, it turns out that Bonnie Crombie has chosen the riding in which she will run provincially, and it seems that the candidate that will be running against her is Patrick Brown's mother-in-law. Apparently a very good party organizer in her own right, not sort of like a nepo thing, Patrick Brown going, hey, just like send my mother. No, apparently she's politically active in her own right and has her own credentials and all of that kind of stuff, even without Patrick Brown. So yeah, the rivalry somehow continues, I guess. She is pretty confident that she will win.
host Steve Paikin on TV in Ontario made the point that in the last provincial election, the Progressive Conservatives, at least provincially, swept all the seats in that area. So, are you sure that you want to run there? Is that a risk? And she's pretty confident. Says, and the mayorship in Mississauga also switched to a more conservative mayor after her as well. So, yeah, we'll see. But while there are still some things to improve in terms of presentation and that type of stuff, there are some elements of a plan. There are other elements of presentation that are very good, and some elements of a plan. And of course, her plan on housing specifically is an exceptionally good plan, because Nate Erskine-Smith, who's now the Minister of Housing, when he was running for the leadership of the Ontario Liberals, put a lot of work into that. And it seems that she saw that, she honored it, respected it, got a lot of people that worked on that with him to work on her plan, and she took a lot of elements of it. So we also have, let's say, in a wild scenario where the Liberals secure another minority government federally, and Doug Ford does go down in Ontario, we would have on housing a federal minister of housing, Nate Erskine-Smith, who wrote pretty much the majority of the plan that the Premier of Ontario, Bonnie Crombie, would like to put in place. That would seem like really good odds that the housing actually would get built. Unlike the current scenario where Doug Ford has promised for a long time that he was going to build housing, even did the whole green build thing on the premise that we need to build houses. And now the RCMP has come calling, and is basically a drag on the nation. Lowers the national average when it comes to housing starts. So, Guy didn't get it done. He ran on getting it done, and he didn't get it done. And she's pointing that out. We also have Merritt Stiles of the NDP, who made her launch. Had the more professional, sort of traditional sort of looking launch, glossier, a lot of people behind her, energy, that type of stuff. So made a good debut, in terms of all the optics and the visuals with the launch. I'm definitely going to spend some more time listening to what she had to say to be able to bring that to you. But first initial comments seemed to be that went well. That was the things went according to plan, and the visuals and whatnot that she wanted to create were indeed created. And then I, like I said, I will go and look at the content. And then, of course, we have the Green leader, Mike Schreiner, who everybody admits is the best person to get a quote from, is the best person to get a take on what the should be. He's got developed policies and whatnot. But again, same comment that we're making about the Greens. But the party is really nowhere. Nobody votes for him. It's like, again, all you have to do is make the choice to vote for it. If he is the best leader, and if he does have the best policies, and if he does have the best interactions, and he's the most interesting to listen to, vote for him and vote for his candidates. It's like, and I mean, here's the thing with the Green Party, right? You are going to get a very good constituency MP, right? Greens just campaign differently, right? I've seen Green campaigns where they had events where they had people come in and get your home compost thing, right? Like this, and you come over there and you're talking about stuff, and you bring something, like they're not just campaigning, right? They're doing things along the way to try to help you. So they campaign in very innovative manners. The party's been around for a long time. They don't just have green policies. They are worth a look. They are truly worth a look. They are worth your time. They're worth your consideration. So please do. And in all the time that we've had Green MPs, MLAs, or MPPs, or anything of the sort, I mean, there's been very few reports of them doing a bad job, of them not getting reelected. It's like once people get a Green MP or an MPP or a representative, they tend to like them. So they must be doing something right. So yeah, like
give them some of your consideration, because they are a legit. On this show, unlike other shows, is we treat all the parties that have seats as legitimate parties. 1 seat, 2 seat, doesn't matter. Legitimate. You were recognized. Right? You run candidates in as many seats as you can. You present a full platform. You present a full policy. You deserve to be heard, and you deserve to be considered on equal footing as everybody else. So that's our attitude towards, we don't treat them as a marginal party. We treat them as a real option. It's different from other shows. You'll find that here. But yeah, Mike Schreiner is, by all accounts, all parties agree, all party pundits agree, whatnot, is a very good, very intelligent, very competent man and party leader. So if he's like that as a party leader, maybe he's like that as a party manager and a caucus manager as well. Sometimes you got to roll the dice, right? So, if you're not, and particularly progressive conservative voters, if you're tired of Doug Ford and you don't want Bonnie Crombie and you don't want NDP, just consider looking at the Green platform. You might be very, 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 very surprised. There's a lot of notions in the Green Party platform that progressive conservative voters would like a lot if you take some time. So if Doug Ford's not your guy, but you just can't see yourself voting progressive, just, again, take a look. So you might find out that you have more options than you think. All right? So we have the federal leadership. We have the Ontario election going down. Things are happening. And there's a couple of other things I wanted to mention before we stop today. I'm just going to look at some of my notes here for you to make sure that I've got everything here. All right. Yes. Yes. Yesterday, of course, the Bank of Canada did reduce its prime rate. We mentioned it on the show because it happened. Its lending rate, overnight rate, by 0.25%, and the U.S. Federal Reserve, as predicted, did not lower theirs. So that increases the gap between Canada and the U.S. with regard to interest rates. I haven't checked this morning whether or not it had an impact on the dollar. It could, because when that thing happens, it does make imports more expensive if the dollar goes down. And, interest rate spreads do change where money flows on international markets. So we have that going on. With regard to the Federal Reserve in the United States, there's a bit of a controversy or a bit of drama in that the President of the United States tried to direct the federal bank by demanding they lower interest rates, and Jerome Powell, for whom the President of the United States has no love, he would like to kick Jerome Powell out, but Jerome Powell made it very clear, yeah, I'm staying, so you're going to have to cope. Well, Jerome Powell defied the President and said, quote, "We don't know what will happen with tariffs, with immigration, with fiscal policy, and with regulatory policy." So, in other words, President-elect, if you were able to give us a little clarity on that, but we know that's not your thing, because getting you to commit anything is like nailing Jell-O to a wall, and how do you negotiate with Jell-O? And how do you plan based on Jell-O? We can't give you your interest rate cut, because markets like predictability and stability, and you are anything but that. So, sorry, buddy. So, yeah, that happened. We have to look at, with the Bank of Canada, there is, Tiff Macklem, the governor of the Bank of Canada, made a point of stating that we have to pay attention to what the forward guidance is with regard to the bank, because the same instability that the Federal Reserve is facing is the same stability we are. So in terms of what we're going to do for the future, now we're really going to be looking at these other external factors. So yeah, we have that. I'm going to take a look to see if there was anything else with regard to that, Kits and Cubs, in case there was any additional details here, because I do have the story right in front of me thanks to the good folks from iPolitics who wrote on that. In fact, they made it one of their top stories of the day today, which is kind of nice. So yeah. Oh, well, that is not the right story in any way, shape, or form. Sorry, I mistaked. Sorry, the number one story, that was my mistake, Kids and Cubs, was the U.S. Secretary of Commerce's statements indicating stuff about tariffs, that we will get into that. But the Bank of Canada, here we go. Not the first story. I was a little surprised by that, actually, as the words were coming out of my mouth. But this is from Global, Craig Lord. The Bank of Canada warned after delivering another interest rate cut on Wednesday that Canada's economy would be tested, quote, tested in quotes, if the United States delivers on a threat to impose blanket tariffs on Canadian goods. In a, quote, severe scenario mapped out by the central bank, those tariffs could simultaneously send the Canadian economy into a recession later this year and push inflation higher. The Bank of Canada on Wednesday cut its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points, bringing the policy rate down to 3%. So we're starting to get to the neutral interest rate. Some say it's around 2.5, some say it's 3, but we're getting in that range. The move, the central bank's sixth cut in a row, was widely expected by markets and most economists. BMO chief economist Doug Porter said in a note to clients on Wednesday that the quarter-point drop solidifies the Bank of Canada's position as, quote, the most aggressive cutter in the world. Now, little context, Bank of Canada was also the most aggressive increaser in the world when our rates went up. So this is kind of natural. We swung the pendulum hard one way and we're swinging it hard back. A little harder than most. Wednesday's statements contained little forward guidance from the central bank about where interest rates could be heading next. Quote, there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and it just didn't seem useful to provide guidance, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem told reporters on Wednesday. And I want you to pay attention to that very quickly, very carefully, right? It just didn't seem useful to provide guidance. That's code for Donald Trump is just so freaking unpredictable and never sticks to the same story 2 days in a row, hardly. Is that we are incapable of providing any forward guidance. We just have to wait and see what he does. That's how much of a menace to the global financial order this man represents. The Bank of Canada's focus on Wednesday revolved largely around the threat of tariffs from the United States and the impact of a looming trade dispute. As of Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump has maintained he is weighing imposing 25% blanket tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico on February 1st. Quote, the potential for a free trade conflict triggered by new U.S. tariffs on Canadian exports is a major uncertainty. This could be very disruptive to the Canadian economy and is clouding the economic outlook, Macklem said on Wednesday. The central bank warned in a statement accompanying the rate cut that, quote, if broad-based and significant tariffs were imposed, the resilience of Canada's economy would be tested. James Orlando, director of economics at TD Bank, told Global News that Canada was gearing up for a, quote, banner year economically, with inflation largely under control and previous interest rates cuts setting up growth. This was supposed to be a year of economic revival in Canada, he said, and now with Trump, that's all uncertain. Macklem said that it's unclear exactly how Canada's economy would respond to tariffs because policymakers don't know how steep the restrictions would be, what they would cover, and how long they would be in place. How Canada would respond is also a wild card in the forecast. Nevertheless, some things are clear, Macklem said. Quote, a long-lasting and broad-based trade conflict would badly hurt economic activity in Canada. At the same time, the higher cost of imported goods would put direct upward pressure on inflation. The Bank of Canada is not including tariffs in its baseline forecasts for the economy. A revised outlook released Wednesday calls for 1.8% growth in real gross domestic product over both 2025 and 2026. But the central bank did conduct an analysis of one scenario, which Macklem calls a, quote, severe case, wherein the U.S. applies blanket tariffs of 25% on all trade partners, not just Canada or Mexico, and those nations impose matching tariffs in kind. The situation would also see those tariffs remain in place on a permanent basis, not waived quickly as a negotiation tactic. Under this analysis, Canada's real GDP would be about 2.5 percentage points lower than it would be in the first year of tariffs than it would be otherwise. That would put Canadian economic growth into recession territory for this year, a forecast backed up by other economists who have weighed the impact of possible U.S. tariffs. Inflation could also jump higher, at least on a temporary basis, the Bank of Canada projects.
Whether those cost hikes are temporary or sustained depends on whether inflation expectations also rise, a phenomenon that helped keep price pressure sticky in the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. A trade war could impact prices in a few ways, but the central bank is quick to point out that there's little historical precedent for tariffs of this magnitude. If Canada were to impose retaliatory tariffs on American goods in response to U.S. trade salvos, those items would become immediately more expensive for Canadian businesses. Trade uncertainty has also been a significant drag on the exchange rate between the Canadian and U.S. dollars since Trump's re-election, and a weaker loonie makes imports more expensive. Macklem said Wednesday that this could drive up inflation on fresh fruit and vegetables at a time of year when much of the produce Canadians buy from the grocery store is imported from abroad. That'll get passed through pretty quickly, Macklem said of higher costs on produce. A wider differential between the interest rates on either side of the Canadian-U.S. border can also hurt the loonie. The U.S. Federal Reserve pressed pause on its interest rate cut cycle on Wednesday as it too waited to gauge the inflation implications from Trump's policies. The Canadian dollar weakened somewhat against the American greenback on Wednesday and remains more than 6% lower year over year, holding above 69 cents U.S. Macklem said that with inflation back around the central bank's 2% target, it cooled to 1.8% in December. Monetary policy is, quote, better positioned to help the economy adjust to new developments. But he also acknowledged that the Bank of Canada's only tool to respond to trade uncertainty is the benchmark interest rate, which can be limited in the face of both a weakening economy and rising inflation. Lower rates stimulate economic growth, while higher borrowing costs are meant to tame inflation. Quote, we can't lean against weaker output and higher inflation at the same time, Macklem said, adding that the Governing Council would need to carefully assess the inflation forecast amid a weakening economy. Orlando said that in TD's modeling, tariffs are expected to lift up inflation after they're imposed, but have the opposite effect when they're removed. For the economy, however, trade wars have a more prolonged negative effect as consumer spending and business confidence take a hit. That should push the Bank of Canada to lean more towards reducing interest rates to shore up the economy rather than raising them or keeping them elevated to deal with inflation risks, Orlando said. So in other words, according to the TD chief economists here, that if there are tariffs and whatnot and it puts us into a recession, the Bank of Canada is more likely to cut interest rates further than raise them. Wednesday's interest rate decision shows a central bank gearing up for the worst but not yet sounding the alarm, economists say. Quote, in the end, the GDP shock probably outweighs the inflation shock should this prove to be temporary. Today's steps by the Bank of Canada can be viewed as battening down the hatches ahead of a possible trade storm, said Porter, who's from Bank of Montreal, I believe. We mentioned him a little earlier in the story. I'll just go back to check here for you kits and cubs. Just scrolling, I'm sorry. Nope, cannot find his name. But yes, there were two economists being interviewed for a story, one from a TD and I believe the other one from a Bank of Montreal. Mr. Porter is the one from the Bank of Montreal. Porter disagrees that inflationary impacts would be as pronounced as in the Bank of Canada's projections, but he said that the communications from the central bank on Wednesday show monetary policymakers will proceed cautiously in the event of a Canada-US trade dispute. Money markets see more than a 43% chance of another quarter-point cut at the Bank of Canada's next rate decision on March 12th, according to Reuters. But if tariffs are imposed and prove to have staying power, eventually the Bank of Canada would be compelled to cut much more than the market currently expects, Porter said. Orlando, the guy from TD, said Wednesday that absent a trade war, he is maintaining a call for 75 basis points to further interest rate cuts this year to bring the Bank of Canada's policy down to 2.25%. He said the Bank of Canada doesn't necessarily need to keep cutting rates at every meeting going forward, and a pause may be well in the cards at upcoming decisions. Macklem was asked Wednesday how he will be preparing on Saturday as Trump's February 1st tariff deadline arrives. Quote, I will be watching the news very closely, he said. Right now, on that front, we did get a little bit of news, kits and cubs, because yesterday, the president's pick for Commerce Secretary. Sorry, I'm just going to take a little water because, as you can hear in my throat, I'm a little dry.
There we go. Thank you so much for your indulgence there, kids and cubs. This is according to Yahoo Finance. The man U.S. President Donald Trump has chosen to oversee his tariff agenda says hitting Canada with 25% tariffs across the board would be an emergency measure to achieve border security and could be followed by more tariffs in the future. So he's basically saying here that the tariffs that they are planning to put into place are actually a 1-2 punch. The first one is to get us to do the U.S.'s job of controlling what comes over their border into their country with regard to fentanyl, even though Canadian fentanyl represents fentanyl coming in from the Canadian border represents less than 1% of all fentanyl coming into the United States. Again, with the caveat that even 1 kilogram of fentanyl can take out a lot of lives. But we are clearly not the problem here, right, when it comes to that. But apparently they're still on that. Like this, it's our job to stop fentanyl from going into the United States. No, it's our job to stop fentanyl from leaving Canada if we are able to. But if it does leave Canada, then right, it's the United States' job to make sure it doesn't cross their border. That's why we have security on both sides, having both of us doing checks on going out, and when things coming in increases the odds that we catch more stuff. But the United States seems to want to gaslight the American people into believing that it is the job of foreign nations to control what enters the United States and not the job of the United States, which is patently ridiculous. So, but apparently this is the first one is like 25% to get the border stuff we want. And if you don't give us the border stuff we want, well, then we'll smack another tariff on you. Problem is that they have not told us what it is that they want. There's an interview with Daniel Smith on Power and Politics, which is basically saying, I don't really know what he wants, but we should still do this. Right? Nobody knows what he wants. But we have people running around offering him stuff without an ask. It's really weird. During Wednesday's Senate hearing on his nomination to lead the U.S. Department of Commerce, billionaire financier Howard Lutnick, of course, said the plan to impose duties on Canada and Mexico is distinct from Trump's long-term tariff plans. He said the threatened 25% tariff is not a tariff per se, but a type of domestic policy meant to force Americans' neighbors to take action at the borders in order to get us to do the job that they can't or won't do. Quote, you know that the labs in Canada are run by Mexican cartels. This tariff model is simply to shut their borders. Respect America, Lutnick said Wednesday. If we are your biggest trading partner, then show us the respect. Shut your border and end fentanyl coming into this country. Okay, well, honey, respect is earned and it's a two-way street. So shut your border and stop fentanyl from coming into our country because there's way more fentanyl that enters Canada from the United States than goes the other way around. And while we're at it, I'm assuming respect is mutual. I'm expecting, if we're showing you respect, you need to show us respect too, sir. Right? Come on. This is not a matter of showing respect for America if America can't stop fentanyl from crossing into its own country. Your lack of competence does not necessarily signify a lack of respect on our side. America. The number of people and drugs crossing illegally into the United States from Canada is minuscule compared to the volume crossing the United States southern border, a point Canadian Public Safety Minister David McKitty made repeatedly in a news conference in Ottawa following Lutnick's remarks. Ottawa responded to Trump's initial threat with a $1.3 billion border security plan, and some provinces have separately boosted border enforcement. But the president has since expanded his complaints about Canada far beyond border security, because of course that's the game. It's never about what he says it's about, and it's never enough. Lutnick said he believes Canada and Mexico, quote, are acting swiftly on border security, and if they execute it, there will be no tariff, and if they don't, there will be. So there's a lot of this that might be for domestic consumption. Donald Trump has been doing this thing lately where he's been saying things and then declaring victory. Like, for example, and this is another thing that Daniel Smith did during that interview, she actually brought us some U.S. propaganda. As you might have heard, the United States deported people back to Colombia, and the government of Colombia refused to take the deportees, which led Trump to then say, well, I'm going to slap some tariffs on you if you don't take your deportees. And
tried to spin it as if Colombia was a country that did not accept deportees, but that's not true. Colombia has always accepted deportees. In fact, they accepted 124 of them in 2024. The problem that Colombia had is that Donald Trump decided that when they were transporting the deportees, that he would cuff them and shackle them. They had not committed crimes yet, or that we know of. They're not criminals, they're just being deported. So there's no reason for them to be shackled and handcuffed. So the president of Colombia said, no, we're not accepting. If that's the way you're going to send them back to us, they're not. And then they started talking, and then now Colombia is sending planes and is repatriating them themselves. Now Trump is declaring this as a victory. I did this. It's like, no, you were rejected. You were denied. You treated people poorly, and you treated them so poorly that the government of Colombia says, no, we don't trust you to do this. We're doing that ourselves. Now, you could have taken that and spun that as a win. Hey, I maybe didn't get Mexico to pay for the wall, but I got Colombians to pay for taking their people back. But no, it's like, I did this. I made them. It was the threat of my tariffs. No, it had nothing to do with your tariffs. Nothing at all. And you got Danielle Smith coming to Canada saying, well, you got to be careful because Trump did that thing with the tariffs with Colombia, and boy, that sure did work. It's like she spread his propaganda. She came to our country and she spread his propaganda here, and then used it to justify not putting everything on the table. I think we're pretty clear what team she's on, and it's not ours. But Danielle Smith did something really smart as well. Yeah, I know. You all fell down. I know, but she did. And I'll get to that. So chances are that this whole thing about the fentanyl thing is all for domestic U.S. consumption. I'm working hard. See, I got Canada to do all these things. Look at me being effective and present already in my first week. I stopped the fentanyl from coming. Until we get the next, shipment of fentanyl that makes the news crossing from the United States, and then, realizing that he didn't get it done. But for now, it's a win. And the White House press secretary said on Tuesday that Trump was still considering implementing the tariffs. But we're hearing some word as well, right? 2 days before the 1st, well, maybe there won't be tariffs. Maybe what you did is enough. It's always like that. There will be, maybe there won't be, maybe there will be. It doesn't happen. It does happen then someday, one day, and that does happen, right? It happens enough that you have to be worried for it to happen, but most of the time, it doesn't. The threat doesn't materialize with him as well. So that $1.3 billion that we're spending, I can't speak for the provinces, but for the federal government, we did things that we were going to be doing anyway, or that was on our list to do anyway. So again, if we could take the things that we were going to do anyway to strengthen our border, because we need to strengthen it ourselves also from what's going to be coming from the United States, and we were able to package that and resell that to Trump as, hey, we're doing this for you, and let him claim it as a win, fine. That's okay. I have no problem with that. I have one reservation in that trying to engineer things to give Trump material to use back home propaganda-wise, saying that he got to win is not my first choice, but I'd rather he have that than tariffs, even though I realize that him going around to his people saying, I won, increases the odds that he does better in the midterm. So everything's a trade-off here. We just have to count on Trump's ability to screw up more often to erase that kind of gain as we protect ourselves. During Wednesday's confirmation hearing, Lutnick was asked about the possible impacts of the tariffs on manufacturing and automotive industries. His answer suggested that even if Canada avoids the threatened border-related duties, it could still face tariffs in the near future following a multi-agency study of trade practices and deficits ordered by Trump. That was the executive order, said to study all these things and get back to me in April on that kind of stuff. So there's the portion of this that has to do with the fentanyl thing. Do what I want, make me look good and effective, or else I slap a 25% tariff on you. And then the broader thing about him wanting to use tariffs to try to get, for example, an auto company, an automaker in Canada that has, headquarters in the United States as well, headquarters in both countries, to make it so onerous to send the things back and forth that they just shut the Canadian operations and relocated in the United States. That's the longer term goal. So he's trying to basically hollow out our manufacturing sector. This is what he's trying to do. So anything in Canada that also is represented in the United States, he's trying to get it to go there. Any direct foreign investments, trying to deviate it from Canada to go to the United States because of tariffs. Why set up a plant in Canada when you could just set it up here and then ship the stuff up north anyway? Do it here. We've got all the good stuff. So that's his plan. So he's trying to harm us. One way or another, he is trying to harm us. All right? Trump signed an executive action that, among other things, directs the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Homeland Security to assess migration and fentanyl flows from Canada, Mexico, and Canada, and to fentanyl flows from Canada, Mexico, and China, and to recommend appropriate trade and national security measures to resolve that emergency. It also instructs the U.S. trade representatives to start consultations on the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. Trump's executive action says the report on the trade with Canada is not due until April 1st. Lutnick says he prefers tariffs on entire countries rather than on specific products. He said across-the-board tariffs create reciprocity, fairness, and again that word, respect. No, they don't. Across-the-board tariffs cause resentment. And if nations are smaller than you and have no choice, do not make the mistake, good sir, of mistaking or misinterpreting quiet, seething resentment delivered in a context of pleasantness must be observed as respect, because you would be hella wrong. Canadian officials say and then again, him again. You can tell that this was written. I mean, these words are him performing for the audience of one. My way of thinking, and I've discussed this with the president, is country by country macro. Let America make it more fair, Lutnick said. We are treated horribly by the global trading environment. They all have higher tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, and subsidies. They treat us poorly. Yes, America became the #1 best country in the world and superpower of the world because everybody treated them poorly and took advantage of it. That's how you rose to being the best country in the world and #1 everywhere, because everyone took advantage of you and screwed you over. All the time. All the nations. It's not serious. It's not serious. Canadian officials say they remain focused on thwarting the immediate tariff threat. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly was back in Washington, D.C. Wednesday and met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer, who is co-chair of the American-Canadian Economy and Security Caucus. It's Joly's 5th visit to the U.S. since last November's presidential election, part of our efforts to convince American lawmakers that imposing tariffs on Canada would run counter to both countries' interests. And again, I would like to point out how the conservatives keep on saying, government is doing nothing as nowhere. She's been there 5 times since November. Okay? Canada's case still needs to be made to other key Republicans, Joly said, but the Canadian message is resonating. While Joly said her goal remains preventing tariffs, Ottawa is preparing for the president to make good on his threat. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held a virtual meeting with the premiers on Wednesday. New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt said they discussed the impact of tariffs, supports for provinces, and ways to diversify exports to reduce Canada's dependency on the United States. Now, this meeting that we're talking about is the weekly meeting that the Prime Minister has put in place with the premiers while this thing is going on. I think that this time they mostly met virtually. Premiers have largely claimed a united front but continue to share differing opinions on just how exactly Canada should respond. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith called for the federal government to appoint a border czar, again, borrowing U.S. language, trying to Americanize our politics. Quebec Premier François Legault said it's important to secure the border, followed by a quick move to negotiations with Americans to appease Trump's other economic concerns. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe cautioned against including oil and potash in any retaliatory measures, while Manitoba Premier Canoe said if duties are applied, Canada's response has to be noticed. Quote, we can't be a punching bag, Canoe said. So 4 premiers I mentioned, 3 of them appear to have joined the alliance of the cowards, Daniel Smith, Scott Moe, and François Legault. It was just Danielle Smith, but she managed to recruit the other 2 to her side somewhere along the way. So once again, when we're talking about Trump adopting a divide and conquer strategy, Danielle Smith had her hair done and presented herself to Mar-a-Lago and said, hey, Donald Trump used me to divide. And she came back and then divided us even more by taking Scott Moe and Legault and bringing them to her side. Our border is secure. Right? This plea from Danielle Smith and everyone saying, we got to take his threat, we got to take his concerns seriously, we have to address them. Maybe if we just tried to address them, it's like, no. Because in that same interview, you said you don't know what he wants. You cannot try to address the concerns of someone who can't tell you how it is that what it is that you specifically need to do to fulfill. You just can't. You're just guessing. You're throwing free stuff at someone. So that's not wise. Legault is in on it because of the hydroelectricity exports. He doesn't want that to be affected if we're talking about energy. And Scott Moe too came out and says, well, gee, I don't know what was going on, but suddenly they started talking about putting these stuff on energy, and I can't have that. You were talking about that the whole time on that first meeting when Danielle Smith decided to go rogue, wear the CCCP hockey jersey rather than the Team Canada jersey, because you stood with Team Canada and you knew exactly what she was saying then, and you knew why she was doing it. To pretend a couple of days later, say, wow, there's talk about this thing that there wasn't before, and I'm not okay with that, is a bald-faced lie. The junior partner got a call from Danielle and was told to get in line, and he did. That's what happened. So, at François Legault, well, he's not doing well provincially. Right? It looks like the Parti Québécois, and it has looked like for a while, is going to form the next government. And Legault's party is going to take a massive freefall from majority to just a few seats, maybe not even official party status. So, yeah, all of a sudden, like, he's doing the Captain Canada Doug Ford thing as well. No, we can't have our electricity be affected. Like, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Because it's all together. The original plan was not one region of the country and not one sector has an overdue burden. Now, a lot of people are calling for dollar tariffs, right? Chrystia Freeland has called for that. Pierre Poilievre, after everybody else on the planet has called for it, came out and said, oh yeah, me too. And Chrystia Freeland with the dollar tariffs, her thing is to take that money and use that money to redistribute to Canadians, the business people and whatnot that are the most effective. So you have to take that money and you have to put it back into the economy, helping those who have been most devastated by the tariffs. That's her plan with it in order to reduce their impact. So not sure if anybody else has come up with their statement and has gone as in depth as that in terms of not only charging the one-for-one tariffs, the dollar-for-dollar tariffs, but how they would be redistributed once they were collected. In his first official campaign event since dissolving the provincial legislature the day before, Ontario Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford said Trump's duties, quote, are a game to the president. He seeks to divide and conquer, whether he imposes tariffs next week, next month, or waits a year or more, he said. Trump's threats are not going away. So those are the positions. So we see that's what's going on in the States. We're getting a bit of shifting sands. They may not come on the 1st. Maybe we've done enough. And the thing that Danielle Smith did that was smart, but the federal government has also done it too, as Danielle Smith invited people from Fox News to come to Alberta and film the stuff that provincially she's done to shore up the border. Now, Fox News is going to take that and it's going to go there, she hopes, and put it all on the U.S. News. And look what Canada's doing thanks to Donald Trump securing the border like this. Like Donald Trump is also powerful. Yay, Donald Trump, he did a good thing. Look, he got other nations to do, bend to his will and all that kind of stuff. Hey, Because if you're trying to talk to him directly, going through all the officials and having all these one-on-one meetings, while they are necessary because you need other people in his ear, because the last person he talked to is the person he listens to. So you want a lot of people talking in his ear who might need delivering your message. That part needs to be done. But if you want to talk to him specifically, hey, what better way than getting your stuff on Vox News where he sees it? So you know what, Daniel Smith, kudos to you. You figured that one out. That was good. Probably a smart strategy. But the federal government has been doing the same damn thing, because they're going to be talking to their counterparts, and they presented this really glossy video like this that's showing all the stuff that we're doing, images of the new Black Hawk copter that we had, like just landing in the snow, pictures of border arrests and border arrests at the border and border enforcement measures, and, like this, they're sending texts of arrests at the border to other people. See, we're doing it. So the big sort of Hollywood, we're dealing with the TV president, right? So a video, here's all the things that Canada's doing. Boom, helicopter, as the snow, this, cuffs being put on someone. Like, these are all videos, images that he can take and then, put back and go, see, look at all the stuff I got Canada to do. So, we're doing smart stuff in terms of selling our own part, like this, but we need to realize also that all this stuff that we're doing is giving him propaganda material back home. It is, because we are validating the premise, which is what we should not be doing. We should be saying this, that the fentanyl thing is not a thing. This, yes, if you want us to do more to stop the fewer than 1%, that we can try, but there's a law of diminishing returns. Maybe you would rather us spend that money on the meeting the 2% of the NATO goal, sir, where that money could be spent more effectively, reminding you that what crosses into your country is the duty of your law enforcement and border officials to stop coming in. And we do not believe that fewer than 1% is a problem that requires a 25% tariff, right? And we could have just waited to see what he did then. But we validated the premise. Once you do that, you've acknowledged that it's true that we have a problem at the border and the border needs to be secured. I keep on seeing it all the time. Just secure the border and everything will be all right. No, not with Donald Trump. Just do this and everything. There's always another ask. There's always another ask. And Donald Trump always reserves the right to say, well, yeah, you kind of did it, but you did it wrong. Or you didn't do enough. So I'm slapping the tariffs on you. There is no rhyme, no reason, no method, no logic. So, again, I keep on saying from the beginning, the strategy should have been, yeah, we heard you, and then go on to our merry lives, because we don't have an ask. We don't have an ask. Give us a specific ask. What do you specifically want us to do so that we could show you we specifically did that, and then we shut you up. And even that won't work with him. Right? So, it seems that even though Daniel Smith is still doing what she's doing, Scott Moe is doing what he's doing, and Legault's doing what he's doing, there still seems to be a little bit more of Team Canada happening in some ways, because Daniel Smith, I think she has realized that she has no way of knowing what he wants. Right? She's come back and done another thing, though. And this one does irk me. Just as she went to Mar-a-Lago and didn't hear any news about tariffs on the first day, and then ran to Rick Bell and said, see, I did it. I got it. I had the tariffs removed. I stopped the tariffs. It was all me. I did it. Me. And then the partisan hack UCP Press, in the form of Rick Bell, wrote that elogious op-ed that he then had to retract pretty much, or write the opposite one fewer than 24 hours later, when after Trump had been inaugurated and was signing executive orders, one journalist asked him about tariffs and says, oh yeah, those are coming. I'm thinking maybe February 1st. And the whole narrative. And then the narrative switched to Daniel Smith
changed it to, oh, Trump's U-turn is really, really screwed us. How could he? And damn you, Trudeau, for allowing that to happen somehow. I'm not sure exactly how Trudeau's fault it was, but that Danielle Smith misreported to Bell, and Bell ran with that and ran a piece that, he had to basically take down and write the opposite the next day with egg on his face. I'm not sure how exactly that was Trudeau's fault, but apparently to Rick Bell, it was his fault. So Danielle Smith was trying to spin all of that she saved the day, and it wouldn't have been anything else that any of the 12 other premiers or the federal government had done. It was all her. Well, now she flipped that the other way around, and she said, well, I don't know what happened, but we were all talking, and then everybody else started freelancing. She's trying to make us believe that she was the one that stuck to the plan all along and that everybody else started freelancing. Girl, I may have been born yesterday, but I was not born in the dead of night. Everybody else was freelancing. Girl, no. Of all the premiers, you're the only one who went down to Mar-a-Lago. You freelanced. You're the only one who vacationed in Panama. You freelanced. I would say you're the only one who went to the, I was going to say I would like to say you're the only one who went to the inauguration, but that is not true. I believe Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey had also went. But come on. Come on, Danny. Nobody's buying that. Nobody's buying that everybody else started freelancing and that you're the one that stuck the plan all along. Now, speaking of Newfoundland Premier Andrew Furey, while Doug Ford quit after giving us this big pep rally that we all needed to put everything else second, to put Team Canada first during this time, and then Coach quit on us to put himself second to get a new contract negotiation. Actual Captain Canada appears to be Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey, because yesterday he was granting some interviews about the tariff stuff and was asked specifically about the other premiers who are doing their own thing. And he was the one that was able to say to all the other premiers, it's not about you, and it's not about your thing this time. It's about the country. There are times where you need to put that stuff aside. You need to put your partisan interests aside and be on Team Canada. That's what Captain Canada does. Pardon me, I have to sneeze. Oh, thank you again for your indulgence. So yeah. Andrew Furey, keep an eye out for him. And it's not like Andrew Furey hasn't had his differences with the federal Liberal government as well. Andrew Furey is not a big fan of the carbon tax himself and has some big issues with Ottawa with regard to the cod fisheries and a couple of other things as well. So Andrew Furey, even though he wears the banner of Liberal, is far from a Trudeau Liberal. Let's put it that way. And he's stepping up. He's stepping up. Where Doug Ford left a leadership vacuum to go and think about himself, Andrew Furey stepped up. So keep an eye on him, Kits and Cubs as well, doing a very good job for Canada in this particular instance. Again, one of the things about this country that's a good thing, fortunately, is that we always have someone who's an adult in the room, who's competent, who's willing to slide in when there's a void and take some action and just, to take up the role. And that makes me happy. That makes me happy that we have those types of people. All right, looking through some news again, just to making sure that I don't miss anything else here. No, I think that's pretty much everything for today, Kits and Cubs, from what I can see. I'll just take a look as well, and some special other notes here that I have. Take it for you. Sorry, kids, that I've not been able to interact with the chat too much with you today. That makes me sad because you always have some good things to say. But I'm MacGyvering it today. All right, so let's see, what else did I have here? Oh yes, some interesting news from Syria, because we haven't talked about them in a while. Syria's de facto leader has been declared the interim president months after his opposition group toppled Bashar al-Assad and his long-term regime. In a speech to the nation, he said that all armed factions have been dissolved, as well as the old constitution, and al-Assad's Ba'ath Party has also been disbanded. He's also been tasked with forming a transitional legislature. So that's still moving on. In Israel and Gaza, with all that, the third prisoner exchange resulting from the ceasefire deal is expected to take place sometime today. According to Al Jazeera News, 3 Israeli captives will be released by Hamas. In exchange, Israel will free 110 Palestinian prisoners. At least 32 of those prisoners are serving life sentences. There will also be 5 Thai nationals who will be freed. During the course of other things, Israel has also banned UNRWA from being able to operate, which a lot of people are worried about will cause a humanitarian crisis. However, on the other side, there is much more humanitarian aid coming through all the other borders since the ceasefire did go into effect. What else do we have here? Yes. Oh, with regards to Commerce Secretary Lutnick, also behind the scenes, and wasn't really reported until yesterday because this came out during the meeting that the Prime Minister had with the First Ministers, is that the Prime Minister had a 1-hour side meeting with Lutnick when he was in Poland recently for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. So made the best of his time there to make the case for Canada while that was going on. And the information about that video showing the arrests
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.
Good morning,